When local growers put great food on Tennessee tables, that's living green. Join Live Green Tennessee tonight as we check out the trend of backyard chickens with the Knoxville Urban Hen Coalition. Plus, we visit Kelly with Booch Tea to learn about the nutritional values of Kombucha tea and see how this mini town within a fair takes fairgoers back to years forgotten. All this right here, coming up next on Live Green Tennessee.
This program is brought to you in part by
the Tennessee Department of Agriculture. This summer, there's fresh, local food grown by a farmer you know at Tennessee farms and farmers markets near you. There's fun there too, with berries to pick, animals to pet, games to play, fish to catch, and color you can bring home to last all summer long. This summer, find yourself on a Tennessee farm with picktnproducts.org.
and by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Southern Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Connecting the grower to the buyer, the country to the city, and smart shopping with a healthy lifestyle. It's Live Green Tennessee.
Hello, I'm Becky Magura, in for your host, Melinda Kiefer, and I am proud to bring you stories from across our great state tonight on Live Green Tennessee. Backyard chickens aren't a new concept, but with legislation being passed in several cities across the state, it is becoming more popular. Let's take a look at this story from Chris Smith at East Tennessee Public Television and find out why one Knoxville family couldn't wait to get Ruby, Cookie, Annabelle, and Frida in their own backyard.
I'm Dr. Chad Helwinkle, and I'm lead representative of the Knoxville Urban Hen Coalition. Knoxville Urban Hen Coalition was formed in, I guess, late fall of 2008 after a few citizens in Knoxville had citations from the city for keeping hens in the city. It really brought up the issue of how to create local food systems, and really the first simple step is having hens in people's backyards. It's over the plate, it's really a no-brainer because there's so many benefits to having chickens in the city. The urban hen movement's been going on for 10 or 15 years now, and it really started in places like more typically progressive cities like Madison, Wisconsin, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington. But it's really swept across the country, and now it's coming to the southeast here. In going about legalizing hens in your city, some communities have made the mistake of being reactionary, where if somebody gets busted for chickens in their backyard, they immediately go to the city council and say, I want my hens legal. And typically that strategy fails. It took 2 years to get hens legal in Knoxville. And we created a grassroots support of people. And so when we did go to city council, we had over 100 people show up at a city council meeting. And it's hard to ignore at that point. It's not just one person, it's 100 people at city council. And we made linkages with other groups, neighborhood groups in town. If there's a food policy council in your city, that's another good link. Once you have your grassroots support level, then that's the time to approach a city councilman. And we had one city councilman here, Chris Woodhull, was supportive of our ideals, and he was able to sponsor that on city council. If you get one city councilman in your area, he can sponsor that legislation, and then you're on the agenda. And once it was there, city councilmen asked questions about it, and at first they thought it was kind of a crazy idea, but the more we came back and informed them of what we're talking about, the majority of them eventually agreed with us that this is a good idea for our community, and they approved it.
Some citizens came to me and asked me would I sponsor a hen ordinance, and of course I wanted to know exactly what they were talking about. And I hadn't realized that in the city of Knoxville, hens were not allowed. I think that was perhaps an ordinance that was constructed back in the days when Knoxville was shifting from becoming more of a rural town to a big city. And big cities don't want to have like cows walking down their street, and they also don't want chickens. But you know, I immediately recognized it as a wonderful idea, mainly because Knoxville for the past 10 years I think has been moving in a direction of being green. And when I say green, I mean people want to live closer to each other. They want to live more responsibly, more creatively, even more tactily. You know, I was involved in promoting community gardens, opening up an office on neighborhoods to help neighborhoods get more organized. And in my mind, hens and some level of food production in your own neighborhood makes a whole lot of sense to me.
What we worked out with the Urban Hen Coalition along with city officials is the final Urban Hen Ordinance that is really protects the rights of your neighbors and the rights of the hen owner. It really lays out a few simple rules. One is there's no roosters. That protects your neighbor's ears. 2, there's only 6 hens. So not a whole lot, and that protects your neighbor's nose from the smell. And 3, they have to be confined in the coop or in a chicken yard. And the 4th one is there's no slaughtering. You can't slaughter chickens for meat production, it's only for egg production.
Hi, we're the Townsend family, and we were the first family in Knoxville to have hens in our backyard under the new Knoxville permit. And so we acquired our permit in the spring, and then in May we got our chickens, so we've been enjoying them all summer. And we just recently started getting eggs from the hens, so that's been fun. It was my idea to get chickens. I thought it would be just a neat experience. And actually, when I had the idea, I didn't even know whether or not Knoxville had any rules or regulations against or for having hens. And really about the time I became interested was about the time I connected with the Knoxville Urban Hen Coalition and found out that they were in process at that time of trying to get the law passed for people to have hens in their backyard. So we kind of waited until the legal process was complete and then pursued getting chickens. My husband just let this project be mine. He felt like it was fine if I was interested in doing it, but he kind of let me take the reins on it. So, but he's been supportive and he certainly loves eating the eggs.
The names of my chickens are Ruby, Annabelle, Cookie, and Frida. They're really fun, and the funnest part about them is that you get to do something for them and then they pay you back with something else. My job is collecting eggs, and I do it 3 or 4 times a day.
I think that raising hens is a neat experience, and it's not really too much work. The hens don't make a lot of noise, and their food's not too expensive, and so I think anyone that was interested could make that happen in their own yard and really enjoy the chickens. They're fun.
Hens in backyard are a great way of feeding your neighbors and yourself fresh, nutritious eggs that have a very low carbon footprint and are actually cheaper than in the stores.
I think the hen ordinance, what was most interesting to me is that it wasn't just about hens. It was really about people wanting to live closer to each other and become more tactily and creatively involved in the green movement. That's really what it's all about. You're going to find people are going to have other movements that may not be about chickens or hens. It may be about other things, but it's all tied, I think, to the green movement. And it's flourishing here in Knoxville, and I'm pretty sure it's flourishing all across Tennessee.
Kelly of Booch Tea took an earnest love at first sip and turned it into a lucrative home business. This entrepreneur's work can be found in stores in Nashville, Murfreesboro, and Franklin, and can be ordered online. But what is kombucha tea?
My name's Kelly Snavely, and I'm the owner and operator of Booch Kombucha Tea. I started the company a couple years ago. It's really grown by word of mouth. I started making kombucha for my family about 5 years ago, keeping my family healthy. I've always been interested in health and nutrition, and my degree is actually health and exercise science. And so I've just always loved reading about health and nutrition. Kombucha originated in Russia and Asia a couple thousand years ago. Kombucha is an alive tea, and the culture that goes in the sweet tea it's a combination of yeast and bacteria, and what it does is it turns the sweet tea into a slightly effervescent, kind of a tart cider-like beverage once it's gone through the fermentation process. And it's got a lot of probiotics, antioxidants, B vitamins. It's just a really healthy elixir once the fermentation has completed. Kind of like what's in yogurt. It's good for digestion, lines your intestines, so it helps you be able to absorb the nutrients in your food and digest it properly. The culture feeds on the tea, the tannins in the tea, so once all the fermentation has completed, there's not much caffeine left in the kombucha tea, and it also feeds on the sugar in the tea, so it's no longer a sweet tea mixture anymore. When I make booch, I use a little bit larger pot to make it at home. This would be the pot that you would want to use. You want to just bring a quart of water to a boil, purified water. Once the water comes to a boil, you'll put in 1 cup of organic sugar. And you always want to use organic sugar. Don't want to use honey or agave nectar because that can counteract the good bacteria in your culture and work against it. So you dissolve the sugar in your boiling water, and then you'll add 4 tea bags. You can use black tea or green tea. I always use black tea just because I feel like it gives it a more full flavor in your tea, and just give it a little bit of a stir, and then just let it sit covered until it's cool. And that might be just a couple hours or overnight. You always want to keep it covered to keep any kind of insects or dust out of your tea. And you just let it sit and steep. So once the tea has cooled, you'll remove the lid and just scoop out your tea bags and just set those aside. And you'll pour your cooled tea into the fermenting jar. And then you'll want to take another 2 quarts of purified water and add that to your fermenting jar. All right. So now you've got your cooled tea in your fermenting jar, and you'll need your culture of bacteria and yeast. The correct term is a SCOBY, which is a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast. Put that into your cooled sweet tea mixture, and then you'll also need a cup of already fermented tea, kombucha tea, and add a cup to your fermenting jar. And the culture, it looks like a flat, rubbery pancake that's kind of a cream color. And you always want to put a cover on the top. You don't want to put a lid on it because it does need oxygen to ferment. So just take some kind of cloth with a tight weave and secure it with a rubber band. You don't want to use cheesecloth because the weave is too large and it'll allow gnats and dust to get in. So just something with a tight weave. The longer you let it ferment, the less sugar is in your tea after it's finished fermenting. So it is good to let it go about 12 to 14 days. Okay. So once your kombucha tea is to your liking, you'll remove the cover, and with a clean hand, you'll remove your culture and put it on a clean plate. And then you're ready to strain your fermented tea. And this cloth is actually a hops bag. I got it from All Seasons Wine and Beer Brewing store. And I just cut a piece. I found that this is the best material to strain kombucha through. So you just put it in your strainer, and you're ready to strain your tea. And this batch will actually yield 3 quarts. So you'll be able to fill a half-gallon jar, and then you'll have a little bit left. You can fill a smaller bottle, or just drink a glass right away. You will want to keep a cup of your fermented tea for your next batch, and you'll just put the cup of fermented tea back in your fermenting jar with your culture, and you're ready to start another batch. So this is the half-gallon size, and I also have 12-ounce size. I've got the peach, raspberry, ginger, and original. We do plan on expanding and being in other cities in Tennessee, as well as Nashville and Murfreesboro. All the labels are hand applied, and each lid is put on by hand and safety sealed, and my husband helps me with the labels, so it really is a family business. My 5-year-old daughter, when she was about 2, I would put kombucha in her sippy cup, and she couldn't say kombucha, and so she would just say booch. And so my husband and I just started saying booch, and the name stuck. And then one day I took her sippy cup away from her thinking she was done, and she said, "My booch." And I thought, I'm going to get that website. So it's mybooch.com. My daughter may take over the business one day.
In Wilson County, they don't just ask the citizens to come to the fair, they bring the city. Fiddlers Grove, that is. Join us on a tour of the largest collection of log homes, century barns, and old country stores in the state. Step back in time, and maybe your memories of times gone by will be rekindled at Fiddlers Grove.
Well, when we started Fiddlers Grove in 1991, of course it didn't have a name. So we had asked the local historian, Dr. Frank Burns, to come up with a name for it. Well, we had located Fiddlers Grove in a grove of trees, and we were able to build our village and not cut a single tree down. And we have buildings that date back from 1797 through 1940s, and actually we have some new construction that are just brand new. But what we have done in preserving these buildings and starting this village is that we have collected buildings from all over our county. We have artifacts in all the buildings that date back to the beginning of Wilson County, and so we feel like that we have preserved a part of the history of Wilson County here in our village. One of our latest additions is our cobbler shop. The cobbler shop has been extinct since the early 1900s. The one that we have dates back to the 1870s. Mr. Joshua Hudson started out making shoes. Another building that is near this building is called the Rice Cabin. And Mr. John Rice moved into Wilson County in 1797, bought 100 acres of land from Andrew Jackson, built a log cabin in 1797. The little cabin served as their home, and it also served as the church. And it was the beginning of the Leeville Methodist Church here in Wilson County that's still going today. So it's probably the oldest building that we have. The grist mill was originally constructed on the Clinch River, and it was near the Tennessee-Virginia border is where it was located. And then the flood of the 90s, the grist mill, the building itself was completely washed away. And so we acquired the grinding stones and the wheel from that original grist mill there. So we have built the house back as it was there. The Rowland barn, it came from the Rowland family farm, which is west of here. It was kind of an unusual barn in that it was used for to store their grain in, and outside the barn they had their chicken nest, if you will, along the edges of the barn, that the chickens laid their eggs there, and was a safe place for that to happen. So it is from one of the early agricultural family farms in Wilson County. We also have another building which is near here. It is our Century Farm building. The Century Farm building came from a century farm, which meant that it was in that same family for over 100 continuous years. That building now is a museum. We have 84 century farms in Wilson County. We have 13 of those that are over 200 years old. So we have a lot of artifacts and things from those families that is housed in the Century Farm building. So we think that is unique in that Wilson County has the most century farms that are certified in the state of Tennessee, and I'm working on 5 now, so we're still continuing to grow. Agriculture, Wilson County is an agricultural community. They've been first in corn production, they've been first in tobacco production, and in fact, Mr. Neal, who lived in Wilson County, he was the one that developed the corn that would produce 2 ears of corn on 1 stalk. Traditionally, it had only made 1. So he made a lot of people millionaires from this that he acquired through his process. We do have a resident broom maker that comes during the fair and sits up at Mr. Luther's broom shop and makes brooms, which he sells there on site.
What I'm doing is called winding a broom. Got the broom handle stuck inside the holder right here. Take a little broom corn, lay it out underneath this wire, lay it out in a fairly even line so I don't get a lumpy lopsided broom. So I turn the treadle with my foot, the wire draws out, winds around, holds the broom corn in place. And I just keep adding more and more to it till I get half a bigger broom I need to have. This machine's called a broom winder. This one was made about 1880. Broom corn is a plant raised just to make brooms. It's a plant that originated in Africa about 2,000 years ago. It was taken up into southern Europe around 800, brought to North America in the 1720s. It used to be a very important commercial crop in Tennessee, Kentucky, all through the Mid-South region. Till the late 1930s, soybeans became a viable commercial crop at that time, and there's a whole lot more profit and a whole lot less labor in soybeans than in broom corn. By about 1960, broom corn pretty much disappeared from the eastern half of the United States. Small little garden plots around here and there are still a few small farms. There are a number of broom shops scattered around the countryside, and usually the broom shop will contract with the local farmer. Well, when I finish winding the broom, it comes out round, and for about 800 years, all anybody did was tie a string around the middle of it and start sweeping the floor, your basic round broom. In 1798, the Shakers figured out that if you took a round broom and flattened it out, you'd get a whole lot more work done with a whole lot less effort, same amount of material. So they're the ones who figured out how to turn the round into the flat, and it's all in how you sew it. When I finish sewing the broom, as a flat broom, it ends up looking like this, a far more efficient way of sweeping.
I think it helps people understand the importance of retaining and holding on to what they have of their lives and their families' lives that they probably hadn't thought about before. So that's the one thing that I guess I am most proud of, is that I think that it's kind of contagious, that they take it back with them and they start doing some things with it on their own for their families. So that means that it's going to continue on.
Before we go tonight, we would like to take a moment to remember a very dear friend of Live Green, Tennessee. Our host, Melinda Kiefer's father, Tony Stone, recently passed away. Melinda has graciously and eloquently come into each of your homes over the past 2 seasons, and she'll be back soon to help guide you through all the local growers, green thinkers, and farmers, and more that our great state has to offer. Until then, our thoughts are with Melinda and her family. We are so excited to be bringing you Live Green Tennessee weekly now, and we hope that you'll join us next time as we take a look at Edible Memphis Magazine, find out about no gas scooters, and take a look at some all-natural body oils and soaps. All this next time on Live Green Tennessee.
This program is brought to you in part by
the Tennessee Department of Agriculture. This summer, there's fresh, local food grown by a farmer you know at Tennessee farms and farmers markets near you. There's fun there too, with berries to pick, animals to pet, games to play, fish to catch, and color you can bring home to last all summer long. This summer, find yourself on a Tennessee farm with picktnproducts.org.
And by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Southern Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.